Welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Planning Commission, Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. This meeting is called to order. I'll request if staff can respectfully take the roll tonight and provide instructions on how to provide comment for tonight's meeting.
Sure. Commissioner Davidson. Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Lubomirsky.
Here.
Commissioner Privatali.
Here.
Commissioner Saudi.
Here.
Vice Chair Samudzi. Vice Chair Samudzi.
Here.
Okay. Chair Mercado.
Here.
Great. So this evening, this meeting is being streamed live to YouTube chat, where viewers can provide comment in live chat or by phone calling 669-900-9128 and entering the meeting ID, which is 872-0645-4435 and the pound sign. If you are participating by telephone and wish to provide comments, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period. Once it is your turn to speak, you will hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. You'll need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Once you do that, you may speak and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure you have the volume on any other device that you're watching turned off so that we don't hear the feedback or any audio delay. If you are submitting comments on YouTube, please write public comment first in all caps, and then introduce yourself and submit your comments in groups. The chat version has a character limit of 200 characters, so you'll need to enter your comments in groups so that you can enter all of your comments. If you have submitted comment letters prior to the meeting by email or letter, it has been forwarded to the Planning Commission and published on our website. I also want to mention that closed captioning is available. The link is available in the live chat, as well as all the info for the meeting ID.
Thank you. Okay, so next we'll move on to the order of the agenda. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda? Looks like none. Thank you, and thank you, Ali, for providing a quick overview of the COVID-19 related meeting procedures. I will also do a quick overview of tonight. Tonight we're going to begin with the staff report. Then we'll hear from the applicant. The applicant, please try to keep your presentation from 8 to 10 minutes. Members of the public will then be invited, and if necessary, we'll read comments that are made in the YouTube live chat, and people on the conference call can speak when they receive notification that they've been unmuted. And again, we request you keep your comments from 2 to 3 minutes. Commission will then have the opportunity to ask questions of staff, the applicant, or the public, and then we'll bring it back and close the public hearing and deliberate and take action as necessary for the item. So next is urgent communications. Does anyone with an urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda, this is your time to address it to the commission.
If you're participating by phone and wish to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda, please press *9 on your phone or click Participants tab. Select Raise Hand through Zoom to virtually raise your hand. When it's your turn to speak, you will hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. At that time, you can press *6, and that will allow you to unmute yourself. You can then speak and introduce yourself. You'll be allotted 3 minutes to speak. Please be sure to turn off any other device so that we don't hear feedback or audio delay. So I don't see anyone. I will now look towards our tech people, Michelle Ginn, to see if there are any chat items for this item. And it does not look like there is any. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
I do not see any. Thanks.
Okay, great. We'll move on then to the consent calendar. And on this one, it's one item, and that's we're going to approve the minutes from November 12th. and November 17, 2020 Planning Commission. So those were provided to us. I'll seek if anybody seeks to approve those, or if anybody wants to amend them to include poems, limericks, or anything else.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Lubermiski. Is there a second?
Can you repeat?
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. And so we have a second. And so do we have a vote? Oh, sorry. Comment. Is there anyone in the conference call that wishes to provide public comment on the minutes? If so, please press 9 to virtually raise your hand. When it's your turn, you're going to hear a notification of the host inviting you to participate. At this time, you will then press *6 to unmute yourself, and at that point you can speak for an allotment of 3 minutes. Make sure you turn off all your audio so that we do not hear feedback or an audio delay. And at this point, I do not see anyone raising their hand, and I will look to Michelle to see if there's any chat.
No
comment. Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Can we take a roll call, please, on the minutes?
Commissioner Davidson? Oh, sorry. Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Lubermiski?
Yes.
Commissioner Previtali?
Yes.
Commissioner Saudi?
Yes.
Vice Chair Samudzi?
Yep.
And Chair Mercado?
Yes. Okay, great. So next we'll move on to our public hearing. And next we're going to move on to our first public hearing item is for tonight and discussion. And this is the 1215 2nd Street request for a use permit and environmental and design review permit to allow 1, the increase in the height of the existing structure on the site to accommodate a new ground floor residence, 2, the construction of a new 3rd floor office area, 3, the addition of a new staircase and elevator tower at the rear of the existing structure, and 4, the construction of a new detached structure at the rear of the site with 2 new residential units above garage parking on a 5,000 square foot. So if staff can please provide its report.
Thank you, Chair Mercado. There you go. Thank you for the introduction, Chair Mercado and Planning Commissioners. Yeah, this is the 1215 2nd Street project. In fact, this is located directly across the street from the 815 B Street project, which you may remember. It's currently under construction. It's directly across the street from it. Project description, as Chair Mercado has stated earlier, this will raise the existing story and a 3rd office. It's a Craftsman era building. Used to be a single family residential, and then it was deemed a commercial office in about 20 years ago from the city. So essentially a left and fill, which will create a new residential unit on the ground floor. Second piece of this is to add a 3rd floor office space. So we are putting a unit underneath and then putting another office area above the existing building, adding a staircase elevator tower in the rear of this building so to have access to the 3rd floor. And then the last element of this would be to construct a new 2nd building at the rear of the site, which will have 2 additional residential units above garage parking. As Chair Mercado had indicated, this involves a couple of planning entitlements, an administrative use permit to allow residential in a commercially zoned district, and then also a design review permit to allow for the 3 new units on the site, and also for the increased FAR on the site that will be more than 40% of the existing FAR. The site is challenging due to the non-conforming size. It is 5,000 square feet where there is a minimum of 6,000 square feet on the site per zoning. It is a changing transitional location. As I indicated, the 41 unit 815 B Street project is located directly across the street. which is currently under construction and is taking form as we speak. It's located on a busy arterial corridor going through the downtown. The Design Review Board subcommittee has reviewed this on 2 separate occasions. In April this year, a conceptual review, and then in October this fall, the formal project was reviewed, and at that time, the board unanimously recommended that the site and building design were adequate, and they supported it, and subject to the following consensus comments about encouraging the applicant to explore relocating the bike rack that is currently along the frontage to allow for additional landscaping, and also encouraging the applicant to explore using a different type of landscape material than a Grass Creek patio, which is in the front. It's in the lower unit, between the lower unit of the existing building and the frontage. This is the public comments. Notice was given, and staff has not received any public comments on this project to date. Findings and conclusions from staff we'd like to advocate is that this is a changing transitional site located on a busy downtown arterial. The project proposes to add rental or apartment units to an existing community along the 2nd Street frontage, which is in compliance with the good design guidelines for the downtown. Public Works Director has reviewed and supported the proposed off-street parking spaces and the required turnaround movements. Design Review Board recommends approval of both the site and building design with minor comments. Staff also finds that the project generally complies with the general plan policies, the applicable general plan policies, the development standards for the 2-3 mixed use West District, the review criteria for environmental design review permits, the San Rafael design guidelines, the good design principles, and the findings necessary to approve both the use permit and the design review permit. Based on these findings, staff recommends the approval of the project subject to the conditions that have been laid out in the draft resolution that is attached to the staff report as Exhibit 2. That concludes staff's brief introduction of the project.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody have any questions for staff on this one?
I do. Steve, what is greencrete? Or green, whatever that was?
To the best of my knowledge, and I have not seen it, it is basically a concrete matting. It comes in, you lay it out as blocks, and then you grow in between.
Oh,
so it provides a stable surface, almost like a patio, yet it is mostly landscape material. It is mostly plants and shrubs and stuff like that.
It's like that diamond shaped, paper.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? I had a quick one. When you allude to transition, this is in a transition area. What do you mean by that?
It's just a changing. Transition, it's more of a loosely defined terminology that I was using, is that it had been an anemic area, an area that had not evolved or changed much on 2nd Street. A lot of 2nd Street, and frankly, a lot of 3rd Street has not changed. But in the last several years, we've been approving projects along the 2nd Street and the 3rd Street frontages. For instance, the 703 3rd Street down there by the bus depot, that was approved, and that is on 3rd Street. There is the 815 B Street, which is along 2nd Street, is a fairly significant project and redevelopment project for the city. 41 units. It is currently taking great form. So it's really just, I guess I should say, a changing neighborhood. It's starting to get recognized and it's starting to get redeveloped. And so this would follow that line of folks wanting to now upgrade their properties. And these happen to be along, again, our 2 arterials, the 2nd and 3rd Street arterials.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, if no more questions, then we'll move on to the applicant. If they could please provide their presentation.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. My name is Heidi Richardson. I'm with Richardson Priebus Architects in Mill Valley. And with us this evening are Adrian Blanco, the owner of this property, Jamie Amdura from my office, and Dan Hughes with DVC Engineering, our civil engineer, should you have any questions. Adrian purchased this property a number of years ago and moved his architectural practice. Here it is. Can you see my cursor? Great. Into this main level, which is above the street. Below is a storage area. It's currently used for storage. There are 3 of these craftsman cottages all in a row on this block on the south side of 2nd Street. And Adrian really likes this craftsman style and asked us to use this character for the development of the property. So here are some views looking at the new development here. The existing is here, more close up, existing and new, and where you can identify it with this palm tree. Whoops. There we go. This is currently the existing site plan. So stairs up to Adrian's office. You have a driveway here and some parking in this area. Adrian needs more office space for his growing business. And he also wanted to provide a 1st floor residential unit for himself or a future tenant. He wants to save the existing structure by lifting it, not only to provide space for a new unit below, but also to get the habitable spaces out of the flood zone. The site floods in this area. So here you see the lower level, the new residential unit, which enters off 2nd Street here and comes in. In the rear, there's an elevator taking you to the 2 office levels above, as well as a stair. And here's 1 parking place for this unit. In addition, we have ADA accessible parking here and additional parking along the side. So we are planning to lift the site with lightweight material to get it out of the floodplain and to help solve the ponding that we have in this area. And Dan Hughes can answer any questions you may have about this and any other engineering and parking questions. So here is the new 2nd level. So this is the level that was lifted and is currently Adrian's office and will remain such, the elevator, the stair. And as I said, the parking that we were able to get on this site really determined how many units we could get in this new building back here. So we have a 1-bedroom here and a 2-story 2-bedroom here. This one is designed to be like a carriage house. So when you're walking down or driving down 2nd, you look here and it looks like the old craftsman carriage house in the back of the property. This is the new 3rd story for this 2-story residential unit. It's hemmed in here with a large commercial building. And then there's a very narrow alley here and an apartment building here. So we really focused the windows and the deck to look up and over our 1st story and to grab light and air in this area. The top floor of the front building will be the 2nd story for Adrian's office. So here you have an example of the elevation. So below is the existing and here is the new. So we've lifted it up and then here's the new residential unit, Adrian's existing office, and the addition to Adrian's office on the top floor. This is the carriage house that you see at the end of the driveway. And behind here is the two-story unit. This is what you see if you were looking in the new units looking toward Adrian's building. Here's the elevator. This is the side that faces the yoga studio and the parking area. So 2nd Street being here, and we enter into the residential unit here. And this is the current elevation. This is the view from Adrian's driveway. Again, the elevator, his office, the 1-story unit with the parking below, and then the 2-story unit grabbing deck space up and over the lower unit. And finally, the front elevation of the rear residential unit, the carriage house, the 2-story unit. Colors and materials were selected to enhance the residential nature of the project. And Adrian has salvaged all the original matching wood siding from the 2 houses across the street that were demolished to construct the 815 B Street project. So he has, landscape, whoops, where am I? Oh, I'm sorry, the materials board seemed to have vanished, but all of this material has, well, we've salvaged it. We don't have enough, I don't think, for the entire building. Landscaping. So there isn't much landscaping on this site because mostly it's parking and driveway, but we do have this area here, and we work closely with few members of the design review board when we develop this. We have a brick wall along 2nd Street with this iron pickets above it, which is in character with the craftsman. Sorry. And this is the fencing that goes along the side of the building. We've carefully selected plant material that is hardy and can live against the building and in this type of environment underneath this palm tree. And the commissioner who asked about the grasscrete, this is what it looks like if you can see this little picture here. I've included this drainage plan if you've got questions, but I've actually finished my presentation and I'm ready for questions.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll bring it back. Commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do. Are you planning to have any solar or EV charging on site?
Well, we'll definitely have EV, and we haven't talked about solar yet. I'm sure that Adrian would like to do that.
I think it may even be a requirement.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure.
I think you have to be solar ready, right?
Correct.
Any other questions?
I think it's touched on in the report. It was mentioned by Steve, but that the logistics in that on a very busy thoroughfare are probably going to be, well, I'm probably going to characterize it as a nightmare, but I'd love to hear, some thoughts beyond just kind of the parameters that were provided around, deliveries being in, outside of the busy times, basically between 9 and 4. Can you kind of characterize any additional thoughts around logistics during construction?
We've given this some thought, but haven't had a lot of discussion. This project, the construction will probably be phased. So with this building being done first, and so obviously all this space will be available for construction vehicles and storage, et cetera, et cetera. And when phase 2 comes around, because Adrian will probably be living and working here, I'm sure he will be able to, he'll understand the neighborhood and he'll be able to handle this. But I don't have any specific ideas at this point. We haven't started talking to builders.
I think that was helpful for me to hear that, just that there is, I mean, obviously makes sense, but to phase it so that you can actually take advantage of the real estate that you have for the driveway.
Mm-hmm. And then once the second building starts going up, the entire parking underneath it will also be available. So we'll have a podium slab and we build off of that. So we don't really lose that space in the back even once that starts.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other commissioner questions before we open it to the public? No? Okay.
So can I start with having Heidi?
Yeah, minimize, please.
I will start by saying that anyone who is on conference call that wishes to provide public comment on this agenda can press 9 to virtually raise your hand. Once it's your turn, you will hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. At that time, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. You can then speak, introduce yourself, and you'll be allotted 3 minutes. Please make sure you have any other device turned on so that we do not receive any feedback or audio delay. And I do not see anyone actually in attendance. I will now ask Michelle again to provide any comments on chat.
No one on chat.
Okay. And still do not see any comments or attendees.
Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing then, or excuse me, the public comment component. And I'm going to bring this back to the commissioners. If we want to deliberate, we can. If you have any thoughts or comments for the applicant at this time, or if somebody wants to make a motion, this is our chance to discuss.
Great project. Let's roll. And it's going to lowers our arena numbers by what, 2 or 3? So
Right.
3. There you see. It's a win-win. Good luck getting out of that parking spot in the morning, though.
Oh, I've mastered it already.
Oh, I'm sure you throw the flashers on half a block early. No, I think it's a beautiful project. I think totally in favor of it.
I'll go next. I reviewed this project when I was on the DRB, and it looks like it's improved and support of the project. I don't have any additional comments.
Anyone else? Or I'm happy to we can make a motion.
Make a motion to accept.
No, second.
Great. So a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Yeah, I agree. Before we do a roll call, I think it's a good project for the area. I think you will have an interesting little parking puzzle to deal with at points. And once 715 goes up, it'll be interesting to see the traffic implications, but that'll just be some neighborhood issues to deal with.
Chairman Mercado, can I have clarify who made the motion and who made the second for our minutes keeper?
Sure. Who made that? I forget. Was it Commissioner Lubomirsky? Did you make the motion?
I made the motion. This is John Provatelli.
Thank you. And who made
And this is Eli Hill. I did the second.
Thank you.
Great. Motion in a second. I guess we could take roll call.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Lubomirsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Privatali?
Yes.
Commissioner Saudi?
Yes.
Vice Chair Samudzi?
Yes.
And Chair Mercado?
Yes.
And I will
Great.
just read that the Planning Commission's decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 5 business days, ending Tuesday, December 22nd at 5 p.m. Anyone wishing to appeal this decision should contact the City Clerk by email at city.clerk2@cityofsanrafael.org or by phone at 485-3066 to make arrangements for filing that appeal.
Thank you, Ellie. Okay, we'll close that item. Thank you.
Thank you
Heidi and
very
Adrian.
much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item. And Barry's always so good at jumping right on. This is the public hearing on chapters 10 through 14 of Draft San Rafael General Plan 2040, continued from 10/27. Planning Commission will conduct its third public hearing on the Draft General Plan 2040 as a follow-up to comments and questions raised during the first two hearings of the draft plan. So go ahead. Oh, Commissioner.
For the record, I joined late, so I don't know if there needs to be a formal comment, but I'm here for the next item.
Go and stand in the corner.
Commissioner Davidson, yes, we will go ahead and amend the minutes or add the minutes that Commissioner Davidson arrived at 7:35. Welcome.
Good timing.
Okay, can I confirm that my screen is visible?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Nice to be back again. This is actually my fourth presentation to the commission in the last 3 months. Fortunately for you guys, they get shorter each time. So this one is a little bit shorter. We're mostly focusing on the comments that we heard at the last two hearings and giving the commission an opportunity to weigh in on our responses to those comments and giving the public an opportunity to continue to comment on the draft general plan. So again, to recap, we've put this slide up in previous presentations. This is our timeline. We have made some adjustments to the timeline as we go. There are a few things that are a little bit behind where we hoped that they would be at this point. We are expecting to release the precise plan roughly a week from now, and the EIR will follow a few weeks after that. But we still are on target to hold some additional hearings in January that are focused on the downtown precise plan, and then subsequent hearing on the EIR and additional hearings to kind of wrap things up by April of 2021. So there are some milestone dates on here. Probably the most critical is that we anticipate the end of the EIR comment period to be in early March, and that day will be determined based on when the EIR goes out. But you can see where we are in the process, about a third of the way through the commission's deliberations on these various documents. I won't dwell on this. This is just a recap of what we covered at the last two meetings. These are the chapters of the general plan. On our October 27th meeting, we walked through the first 9 chapters and got commission and public feedback. At our last meeting on November 12th, we focused on chapters 10 through 14. And as a reminder, the housing element, although it's part of the general plan, is not being updated through this current process. We're going to be doing that in 2021 and 22, according to a schedule that is set by the state of California for all cities in the Bay Area. So to recap the comments that were received on the general plan, we've highlighted those here. There were Zoom and YouTube live testimony at both the October 27th and November 12th meetings. There were 26 comments that came in, I think 14 on the 27th and 12 on the 12th. Then the letters and emails, just to highlight, there were 11 emails relating to tree preservation that we shared with you on the 27th. There was a letter from Shirley Fisher supporting more proactive language on wildlife conservation and recognizing the balance between people and wildlife in the general plan. There was a short letter from San Rafael Heritage indicating their intent to submit more detailed comments, which actually were subsequently submitted at the end of last week. There were 2 letters from Responsible Growth in Marin, the first focusing on language for Northgate and various conservation issues, the second really focusing on the mobility element. There were also 2 letters from Victoria DeWitt, the first primarily focused on safety and geologic hazards issues in the West End, and the second focused on mobility and community services. There was a letter from the Audubon Society that was focused on canalways and wetlands policies, a letter from the Terra Linda homeowners that touched on land use, conservation, and the neighborhoods element, and then finally a letter from the Sierra Club, which endorsed the letter that had previously been submitted by the Marin Conservation League prior to publication of the general plan. And as you'll see in your attachment to the staff report, we have gone through each letter and prepared they are responses, they're not the line edits, but those will follow in the future as we respond to those comments at kind of a second tier. Since last Thursday, when we completed the staff report, we've received a few more comments in anticipation of this meeting. They include a letter from the owners of the Canalways property, a letter from Responsible Growth Marin on the use of terms like should versus shall. So this is the question of, is the language mandatory or advisory? Some comments on the economic vitality element, primarily directed to for staff's consideration. More thorough comments and suggested line edits from San Rafael Heritage on the historic preservation content of the general plan. And then today, a letter from Hillside Neighbors, Victoria DeWitt, commenting both on staff's responses to the previous comments and also some additional recommended changes. In addition, the Planning Commission had about 4 hours between those two meetings of discussion of the content of each plan, and we walked you through all of the chapters and have had a chance to talk a little bit about your questions, your thoughts and comments. Some of the kind of major takeaways were to tie the various trends that are documented in chapter 2 into some kind of a call for action or something that really says, here are all the trends, this is where they're pointing us, and really kind of a platform for next steps and where do we go from here. There was some really good feedback about needing to take a fresh look at San Rafael's economic future, some concerns about the emphasis in the plan on retail and how that aligned with both the dismal future for retail and also the desire to have higher wage jobs in the city, but both important points. There was also some feedback on how we would measure progress and could we incorporate some metrics in the plan, and then establishing clearer links to the different documents that implement the plan. Obviously, these 4 bullets are not the entirety of everything that was captured. You've given us a lot to think about and to respond to, and we hope that the attachment to the staff report provides more direction, more detail, and we're hoping that if you have questions or comments on how staff proposes to respond, we can talk about that this evening. We've also included a couple of elements, or not elements, but appendices to the plan that are underway. The first of these is an implementation matrix, and you can see a sample here. We provided the land use matrix in the agenda packet for tonight. These are underway for all of the other elements of the plan. And this is actually a concept that's carried forward from General Plan 2020. It's just formatted differently. In the previous general plan, this information was in the elements themselves. The advantage of having it in an appendix is that it's a little easier to track, and you don't have to go through a formal general plan amendment when this gets updated on an annual basis. This becomes a really easy way to do an annual report on general plan progress. What we've done here is laid out the programs in the first and second columns, indicated the time frame, whether it's short-term, long-term, medium-term, or ongoing, indicated the responsible departments or agencies, and then indicated the potential resources or the likely resources that would be needed. In many cases, it's staff time. Keeping in mind this is a 20-year plan and there's a lot of implementation programs, so some of this is going to be a long haul to get to full implementation. But a lot of what's articulated here are ongoing programs and things that are implemented through operating procedures. So it's sort of a continuous implementation. We've also added something new, which is how these different programs implement the general plan's guiding principles. You'll see this throughout the document, that there are check marks based on which of the principles are being advanced by the program. We thought that would be a helpful way to show how the plan is working toward or moving the city toward its guiding principles that are established in Chapter 2. Finally, there was some discussion at the last meeting about metrics. We have included some examples in the agenda packet. A couple up here on the screen. Interestingly, these are both from other states, Denver, Colorado, Albany, New York. It's actually pretty rare to see a section in a general plan or explicit metrics called out in a general plan. But if you walk through the elements, you actually find a large number of the action programs are measurable. And in your agenda packet in attachment 4, we laid out a whole series of potential metrics that could be tied to each of the elements, and we organized them by element. We haven't put numbers in, in all cases, but it is possible to actually measure progress on a lot of the items that are in the plan. And as we go through these implementation matrices, which are being developed in the next, actually right now, this week, we're looking for opportunities to include numeric metrics in the document. I can't say that everything in that attachment we gave you is going to be tied into the plan, but we're certainly looking at ways to do that. In this Denver case, there really are only 6 metrics that they're looking at for the entire plan. So I don't know that it will be that simple, but we're probably not going to include 200 metrics or anything like that. So for this evening's hearing, what we're asking the commission to do is accept public comments. This is kind of the ongoing acceptance of public comments on everything related to the general plan. And then following that, to have some staff, to consider staff's direction on the public comments that is in your agenda packet and on the commission comments that's in your agenda packet, and then have a brief conversation about the idea of the implementation matrices and metrics, and then continue the hearing to January 12th. And at that January 12th meeting, we are going to focus on the downtown precise plan, which you will have by then. But there will be an opportunity at that meeting for ongoing public comment and commission comment on the general plan in the event there are things that we need to follow up on. And that would include some of the responses to the comments and other things that may come up this evening. And with that, I'll conclude and turn it back to the chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Barry. Anybody have any questions right now? I think not quite deliberating, but just questions on what was presented, really more of the form or the discussion tonight.
Barry, first of all, I'm still jealous. I think I've spent more time with you the past couple of months than I've spent with my wife. So that's kind of, I don't know if it's good or bad, but matrix in terms, is that like more cities are moving towards that? Is it a common thing to include in a general plan? Or is this kind of new year or two?
I want to just clarify if you're asking about the matrix that's in the back or the metrics that are in the back, because they sound similar.
The actual accountability matrix, the hard and fast, here are the numbers, here's what we're shooting for. How long has that been prevalent in general plans? Because I don't think there was one in 2020.
The metrics, yeah, that's still not prevalent in general plans. It's really actually, in California, it's very unusual, which is not to say there aren't things in the general plan that you can measure, because there are obviously things like level of service and greenhouse gas reductions have been in plans for many years, and those are measurable things. But the idea that we're calling out these numeric items that can be measured is pretty new. I haven't seen it in a lot of general plans in the Bay Area. I mean, I've seen it before, but it's not common.
I think it's great because, I mean, unfortunately, being a teacher, it's all about accountability, right? So, I mean, to see it, I mean, in some ways it's good, but I think for staff and stuff like that and people in the city, it gives them some benchmark, some bar or a place to start a conversation. So I think it's great. I mean, I know you don't want to get into the weeds with statistics, but it's nice to have some idea what our community values and where we want to be, you know. But thank you. It's good.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay.
I agree on the metrics. I'll just weigh in briefly and say that, you know, I just looked at the metrics and I think there are a lot there. So it's going to be hard to measure, but even if we can get, you know, a portion of those metrics being tracked on a regular basis, I think that's going to be huge. And I'm not surprised if we're setting a precedent, a positive precedent.
Ellie, should we open this up for public comment if there's any, please?
Sure. So if there's anyone in the conference call that wishes to provide public comment on this agenda item, please press star now to virtually raise your hand. Once it's your turn, you're going to hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. At that time, you can press star 6 to unmute yourself, and then you can speak. Please introduce yourself, and you will be allotted 3 minutes. Make sure you have any other device turned off or the volume turned down so that we do not receive feedback or an audio delay. So I'm looking at the attendees. I see 2 attendees and I do not see any raised hands. Okay, I see 1 raised hand. So let me go ahead and
hello, everybody. This is Alexander Gladish. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Should I go ahead?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm a Marin native and a current resident. And as Barry had said, I have submitted something for you guys to read, but I wanted to follow that up with my own personal comment here. My family is a part owner in Canalways, and growing up in Marin County, I've been blessed to experience the wide variety of open spaces that the county offers. In fact, Marin has close to 85% of its county designated as open space, which leaves very little for the residents to live, work, play, and go to school. I can appreciate what has been done to preserve West Marin, but I also realize the dire need for more resources for my fellow Marin County residents. So there is a crisis with regard to lack of affordable housing, and there's pent-up demand for industrial space where new businesses and jobs can flourish. I love nature and think this site can use significant improvements for various species, but in order for the funds to support that initiative, there needs to be a compromise allowing for some thoughtful development. Canalways 85 acres looks very similar to what it did 25 years ago when Kerner Boulevard LLC bought the land. The biggest distinction is that there are now more homeless camps, more dogs, crows, and feral cats. What is not there is an abundant wildlife refuge. Nowhere would I expect there to be, with Home Depot and Mega Target to the south, Highway 580 and 101 to the west, and a large housing development to the north. There is an abundant amount of open space, much better suited for bird sanctuaries and wildlife preservation, including the recently restored San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge by Highway 37. We would love to put together a sustainable development plan that can help improve the site for both human beings and wildlife. We should look forward to be progressive in our thinking with regards to how we are going to tackle the various problems facing us. This means recognizing that most of Marin is already protected from any development. We need to strongly consider the few remaining sites, such as Canalways, as a viable solution to address a few of our many needs. This location is truly a blank canvas that is only limited by our collective imaginations. I implore you to see this property as an opportunity to create a vision of the future where the whole community can have equity and input, a place that raises the standards of living for the people that live and work here, in a place that serves the city's needs. I urge the 2040 Planning Commission to move forward with the updated language for policies NH 3.24 and the spotlight discussion on page 4 through 49 with an open mind there is a chance that we can find a creative solution for this unique property. If you allow narrowly focused special interest groups to dictate the vision of our community, we risk jeopardizing the needs of our fellow citizens for the wants of a few politically influential individuals. Thank you.
I have a question for you before you get away.
Sure.
What do you, since you're here tonight, what do you think the biggest challenge is right now? If you want to go ahead and develop it, which you do, obviously, what's the biggest challenge you think you face right now today?
There's this is a complicated site, but first and foremost, I think we need a broader coalition of support. And without that, and without an overriding, 2040 or vision support, people objecting to anything, any idea we have, then it's going to be very challenging beyond the other challenges that we face. So
do you feel the city should be the mover in that, or you guys should, as the future developers, or who should be, moving the needle, as it were?
Well, I think that it's something that goes hand in hand together. So that's why I'm commenting on the 2040 plan, because if there is no vision from the city that is even allowing for a chance of development, then it's going to be challenging. So I think it's something that goes hand in hand. It has to be a partnership with the city and with the broader community at large. But we would have to take the lead as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for your comments, though. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for your consideration.
I actually have a question for.
Please go. I have a question.
Side, but I guess I'll wait till public comment.
I have a question for the speaker, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, great. Could you very, very briefly describe your vision for the site?
It would really depend on how much space we were able to build on. I think, and I don't think this is the case, but in a perfect world for us, we would be able to build on the whole 85 acres. And if you look at Home Depot and Target 30 years ago or 35 years ago, it was either a dump or looking exactly like it looks on our property. And they just got to it sooner, had a dump there, and then raise it up 11 feet. So if we could raise the whole thing up 11 feet above sea level and then support the levee, and we could create a whole community there. But I think it really depends on how much we can build on, and the less we can build on, the less we can do. So the more we can build on, the more we can do for whether it's housing, light industrial, maybe there's a park, there's something for the birds. It just depends on how much space we have.
It would help your argument a lot for density if you figured out how much it would cost to bring 580 a bump over that interchange at Home Depot. I mean, there used to be plans to connect right there and the sewage treatment plant, and the freeway would go over the top, and that would take the traffic away from Bellum, and it would. So it was called the Bernardi hump 25 years ago, but I think find out how much that would cost, because that would be one of the determining factors is traffic. And if you could move some of that traffic onto Anderson through that kind of elevation of the freeway, I'm not telling you what to do. That site has been talked about since I've moved to San Rafael, I think. So, but I do appreciate you calling in, and thanks.
I mean, it would be expensive, and that's another reason why the more we can, build, the more space we can build on, the more we could kind of give back, or invest in the city and those kind of things. But if there's not a lot of land to build on, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity to, have that money.
You got a new mayor and a new council. So now might be the time to reach out if you're, thinking about it.
Right. Well, thank you.
At this time, if there is anyone else on the conference call that wishes to provide public comment on this agenda item, please press *9 to virtually raise your hand, Once it's your turn, you will hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. At that time, just press *6 to unmute yourself. You can then speak, introduce yourself, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Make sure you have volume on other devices turned off so that we do not get feedback or audio delay. And I do not see any other hands. At this time, I will ask if there's anyone in the chat.
Oh, there's no one in the chat.
Okay, and confirming again that there are no other hands, so that's it. Chair Mercado, I think you're on mute. Or we can't hear you.
I don't know.
It's weak.
Uh-oh.
Volume up. Your volume's gone.
We back?
We can hear you a little bit.
Barely hear you. Barely hear you.
This happened last time too. This is so weird. You'd think I'd learn.
Bad connection. Buy a new one and charge it to the city.
Getting to be that time. All right, well, let's just bring it back.
There you go.
Barry, maybe you want to remind us what kind of guidance you're looking for, if there's anything in particular we want to focus in on, or anything that came out of the discussion tonight in particular that could be new.
Sure, yeah, I think, well, recalling what was on that slide, I know the first thing we wanted to see is if there were any commissioner comments or questions on the proposed staff responses to the public comments. So in other words, if you had a chance to review the, it was about a 20-page attachment to the staff report, which itemized each of the comments that we received and then included a statement about how we would be approaching them. And we're able to accommodate most of the requested changes, not every single one, but we are proposing some, some editing to incorporate the concerns and ideas. But if there was anything in that packet that, sparked a question or concern, this would be a good time to bring that up.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Samudzi. First, I want to just say, I'm appreciative that you guys took the time to walk through. There were a lot of comments to unpack. I think the updates that you guys have made, I'm also very appreciative. You guys did quite a bit and incorporated quite a bit of the feedback that we had. I think it's really helpful to have the matrix as well as the example from the city of Denver. The example from the city of Denver did raise one question that I had, because I know that I know you'd wanted to defer some of the concerns, particularly around the comments raised in economic vitality. Wanted to defer those either to general plan amendments, or I think there was like downtown precise plan and a couple of other different components that are coming up, which I think the specifics I think are fine. The one thing that I would call out though is in the, I think it's policy recommendation. I want to say it's 2.2 or either 2.2 or 2.4 in the economic vitality, which references the efforts around retail. We do dedicate quite a bit of real estate in the plan, going over retail, the history, some of the trajectory of tax income and things like that. So to the response that, anything that's specific around, say, other sectors to focus on should be deferred to other parts of the other components. I still think that we need to have some kind of element or with some kind of high level metric that kind of similar to what we see in the Denver plan attached in the general plan. The reason why I say that is the purpose of the general plan, as you indicated earlier, is supposed to be a guiding document that provides high level direction to some of these other additional plans. I think that while the sort of various subcommittees that are going to come out of some of the more specific plans or specific items, I think are going to come up with a lot of the important detail. I'd still think that they need to have something in the plan itself as opposed to an amendment that at least provides them with some initial direction. So the metric might be that we need to actually develop plans in very specific areas as opposed to a specific, say, numeric objective to target. I would be fine if it's that vague even. But I do think that we need to include something within the general plan that provides guidance around the process of identifying what are the non-retail commercial industries or subsectors to target, and what some of the mechanisms would be to explore to help incentivize some of those businesses to actually come to San Rafael. I think it's important to have those as sort of broad guiding pieces, because I think that it's going to be very easy for these different plans to have sort of different approaches to those, depending on the specific problem that they're trying to solve. So something that ties in all of those efforts thematically, I think will be very helpful to include in the general plan proper.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Hill, did you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I think I want to echo what Commissioner Samudzi had said. Barry, I thought this was extremely thoughtful and thorough in prep for this meeting, inventorying disposition of all comments prior, and I thought it was your taking into the comments and showing how you arrived at the comments, like the response to those comments was very thoughtful. I know we had a fair amount of time to comment back and forth with Xander Gladish. I guess, could you comment a little bit? I think that I wanted you to see if you could characterize, one of the things about the general plan is to make sure that we have a balance of the elements. And I think on the canalways issue, I do think that my reading of the whole general plan is that there are elements that are going to sometimes stand in opposition for good reason. And I guess if you could comment on some of the issues that are going on with canalways, it seems like there's notions of I think environmentalism, maybe a false dichotomy of environmentalism versus kind of economic and housing. So if there's if that's the issue that it's worth exploring a little bit.
Yeah, I can comment. Paul is on the line, I think, if he may want to comment on this as well. But that particular site is large enough that I think you can accommodate multiple objectives in the same plan. I mean, the idea is that you're going to do additional study of the resources on that property to better determine where the sensitive areas are and where the developable areas are. And once we have that information, or once the owners have that information, it's easier to make informed decisions. But I think the key is to really inventory what's there so we can determine how can we achieve all of our conservation goals or wetlands restoration goals or sea level rise adaptation goals in the low-lying areas. At the same time, we're achieving our housing and economic vitality goals in the upland areas or the areas that don't have the sensitive resources. So in a way, it's like a postcard example of how multiple competing objectives can be accomplished and be consistent and compatible. You might have a more difficult time if you were looking at, a marsh or something to try to do that. But this site has multiple, areas. Paul, can I put you on the spot and see if you want to add to that?
Not a problem. I have a lot of history with canalways going back many years. And having that history, I do know at one point, this particular site had a lot of issues with biological resources, particularly endangered species and extent of wetlands. Those studies and those analyses that were done are over 35 years old. And we've not done anything more current since then. So we're still looking at a snapshot that's 35 years old, and we want to know what has changed over time. So in looking at this property, we have to be kind of holistic. We have to realize that, we're going to be looking at and having to assess whether or not those resources currently exist. And then we have to deal with new issues like sea level rise. So what we've tried to do in the language for canalways in this general plan update is to at least have a little broadened discussion on some additional land uses that can be considered for this site while still looking at some of the resources that historically we knew were present on this property that need to be revisited. And a comprehensive look at this is still on the table and still is what is recommended in the general plan.
Great. Thank you both for the comments there. That's super helpful. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Davidson.
I wanted to follow up on that subject. Sorry to interrupt your comments, Commissioner Hill. So personally, Canalways, with my engineering hat, we're really salivating over it because it offers such great opportunity to actually build something that is going to help us with sea level rise. It's a key component for the just for the increase in elevation from the shore, and we have a unique opportunity to implement a sea level rise project. We've been studying sea level rise ad nauseum, and I'm waiting for projects, and this is one that it's perfect for that. And then, as the commentator said, those two properties have been developed, the Home Depot and the Target, and the biology reports are over 35 years old, and things have definitely changed. I guess the question I have on this specific project is, are we entertaining actually changing the zoning on that property? Because my understanding is that it has the wetland overlay, and we suspect, though we need the professionals to say it, but we suspect that the wetlands have significantly deteriorated, and we have opportunities to enhance it. Similar projects have happened right next door with the Audubon Society, where it's going to doing something for the creatures is going to be a lot better than leaving it alone, which presents an opportunity for, again, sea level rise and equity issues, actually being right next to the canal, and we're always worried about the displacement of the most vulnerable. And I just see that as all the way around a really great opportunity for a private public partnership, which, as we know with COVID, we have been so successful in these partnerships in order to accomplish things that I just don't see how the public sector cannot go in that direction with the private-public relationship. So I'm just interested to hear, Paul, I think you mentioned we're still looking at it, but I am really interested in hearing whether a final decision has been made on the zoning overlays changes for that property for these purposes.
Okay, I would like to comment on that. A couple of things. First of all, we prepared a sea level rise white paper some years ago. And of course, the county commissioned the Bayway vulnerability assessment, and we've had some subsequent reports prepared on sea level rise. This particular site has some opportunities for addressing adaptation. The way that the current general plan is crafted is that it assumes that a certain percentage of the site is indeed wetland, and that there's a certain percentage of the site that is upland and possibly suitable for development. But we don't know what that percentage is, because Commissioner Davidson, what you mentioned about the 35-year-old studies, one of those is that the last time there was a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers jurisdictional determination on the extent of wetlands on this property was 35 years ago. So what we have in the general plan right now and what we are carrying over is to acknowledge that whatever we do on this property, it has to be done holistically, likely through a plan development process where we look at those resources, we identify what are the resources that are interested, that we want to protect, and what are the areas that we think are suitable for development. And that's part of our plan development review process. So that is being carried over from our current general plan. And so that's how it's looked at. I do want to mention a bigger picture, and that is the fact that our general plan also acknowledges that we are programming to do a specific plan for the greater Southeast San Rafael and Canal area. We had designated both the Southeast San Rafael and Canal area as well as the Northgate area as priority development areas where we are eligible for funding to prepare a deeper dive plan like we're doing for downtown for those areas. So that's another opportunity to look at this property as part of that greater package. So, and again, we're carrying over the recommendation that if we look at this site on its own, it has to go through a plan development process where we're looking at resources and development opportunities or the grander review of a specific plan for that whole area.
Thank you, Paul.
Let me jump in. That environmental report was relatively new when I got started on 2020. Pickleweed, cordgrass, harvest mouse. We spent a lot of time on that. And of course, there's pressure. The owners want to develop it, and the environmentalists want to create a big marsh. I totally understand. It's gonna, like Paul said, it's going to take a big project, a lot of work. The only two things I would hope, multiple story garage on the very northern end, and then the Bernardi hump I was describing, where the freeway would be brought over the intersection. At Target, where that light is, you would turn right, and then you could go to Anderson. And that would alleviate if there's any development down the road, it moves some of it onto Anderson, and you're able to then access, the Richmond Bridge from Anderson. So, I mean, we spent a lot of time on Canal. We get a visit to Canalways. And then the argument of whether they pump it out. Should they pump it out? Should they not pump it out in the wintertime? So it's the only undevelopable, spot in San Rafael left, really. So it's going to be good to hash it out maybe now.
The one thing I do want to mention, and Commissioner Lubomirsky, you have a lot of history on this because you were on the General Plan Steering Committee for the General Plan 2020. And some of this predated that from the General Plan 2000. But the one thing that's very key is the connection of Kerner Boulevard. Right now, there's a disconnect at Kerner Boulevard, and that disconnect occurs on this property. And fortunately, most of that area where the Kerner Boulevard connection would occur through this property is likely upland lands that are not wetlands. But again, we don't know that. We haven't seen a core jurisdictional determination on the extent of wetlands on this property in decades. But it's speculated that is likely that that extension of Kerner, which is very critical for the street network in that area, is likely in areas of upland on this property.
What is upland?
I'm sorry?
What is upland? Could you define?
Upland are areas which are not low-lying areas that are likely wetlands. They're areas that are at our higher elevations where you don't usually find wetlands.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so bringing this back, it's an interesting conversation. I'm trying to bite my tongue to a certain extent and keep it a bit more focused on the item tonight, but I think it was really interesting. So thank you, everybody. Barry, is there more guidance we can provide in terms of what you were saying earlier, the staff report with the comments in there? I think we heard a bit of feedback from some commissioners appreciating that. Was there anything else? Oh,
I just have one thought that I wanted to share. And also, I wanted to thank you, Barry, for your excellent responses. And you tell that's a tremendous amount of work, and I really appreciate it. This could turn into a very large conversation. That's not my intention, but I just, in thinking about the plan and the community, and also traveling around the Canal neighborhood, just on my own, checking it out and whatnot, I'm just wondering if it might be beneficial to the Canal neighborhood to somehow connect it better to the rest of the community. it seems rather isolated because obviously because of 101, the canal itself, Sanderfell Creek, and you know, there are only a couple ways really to get into, maybe 3 ways, 2 ways to get into the canal neighborhood from the rest of the community, Bellum Boulevard, and also that bridge on Grand Avenue, if I am recalling that correctly. I'm just wondering if there's been any thought about maybe like creating a couple more bridges across the creek, or maybe some other entry points into the canal neighborhood to tie it to the rest of San Rafael. I guess this is mostly in the category of diversity and inclusion, so as not to separate the canal neighborhood so much from the rest of the community.
Yeah, so we addressed that in the general plan, both in the neighborhoods element discussion and in there are at least a couple of other places that the equity, diversity, inclusion element and the mobility element. But to Paul's earlier point about the priority development area, there will be a subsequent study of the canal area. And in fact, the city has funding to do an update of the community-based transportation plan, which is the CBTP for short.
There's been no chat activity
and
at all.
That's
I was starting to think, I'm like, am I doing this wrong? Is it broken? And then I start
sorry, I
getting
think
texts from
Michelle,
Rocky.
we can hear you.
Hey, yeah, Michelle, you're on. You're not
Your
on
audio's
mute.
on. There you go. Okay. So the CBTP update is going to be coming up, you know, next year, the year after, and a big focus of that plan is on how to better connect the canal to downtown and to the other parts of the city. There's still a proposal, it's just a concept, to do a bridge over the canal in the general plan. It's carried over from the previous plan, and we didn't remove it. There was some desire to take it out, but we kept it in.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good comment, Commissioner Parvatali, because I think when you analyze what we did in the last general plan by the state asking us to include this equity and inclusion component, I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation. And again, I'm trying to avoid the canalways conversation as much as I want to get back into it. But I think that is such a linchpin. So Paul, to your point about the history of the research that's been done, there's now a new lens that I think will formally be, or is going to be part of the sort of formal review through funding sources and grants and other systems that will help enhance getting the data into this area. Any other commissioners? Let's go to Commissioner Davidson first, maybe, and then Commissioner Hill.
I have a question about the metrics that are now included in the general plan. Barry, if you recall, a lot of my questions about the umbrella purpose of the general plan being the guiding document, and with my engineer brain, I was like, well, how are we going to do all these things? And you were great at explaining how this is the guiding document, and then we will have work programs designed later and with subcommittees to actually accomplish some of the goals in the plan. And now that I'm seeing the metrics in the plan, I guess I'm confused again, because it's a guiding document, but now we have metrics, and I'm all about metrics. And when I look at the appendix, a lot of the deliverables and actually checking the box as done is dependent on staff and grant availability, the bulk of it. And so that's been always a challenge to getting things done. So I guess the bigger question I have is, why do we have now these metrics in the plan where it's supposed to be this guiding document, and then we separately design our work programs with this document?
So I don't think we're creating new metrics. We're basically acknowledging that there already are metrics in the plan. So, you know, we already have climate action numeric goals that have been set and adopted by the city. We already have a housing element that says we want to achieve a certain number of affordable units by a particular time period. So a lot of what we're doing is we're going through the whole plan and finding everything that you can measure and just extracting it and putting it in one place so that in the future, if someone says, how are we doing on implementing our plan? We have this, these measurements that are already in the plan, but have never been highlighted or spotlighted in this way. The other thing is, metrics is sort of a catch-all word. In some ways, they're not all targets. They're just ways to measure progress. So they're indicators, if you will, of how the city is doing, but not necessarily. They're not all long-range numbers that we're trying to meet by a certain number of years. For example, we don't have a target for how many square feet of office space we're going to add each year, but we may want to know that information because it's useful and helpful to inform our decisions. So I think there is a distinction between metrics as just ways we measure how we're doing, and metrics as we're setting a goal that you can measure that we're going to get to by a certain year.
Yeah, I think of it like as a guidepost, really, and not as like, because I agree with you about the fun. When I first saw the metrics, like with the Denver numbers, the first thing I thought of was like, we have to pay somebody to do those analytics, right? And to actually get the data and then analyze it. So, that's a whole nother conversation, but at least, I think what Vice Chair Samudzi was saying, and I agree with him, that we can't really, we can talk about all these ideas, but unless we have something to work towards, it's really hard to have something to weigh our decisions against. So I'm all for having that kind of, that kind of information included. And we're not like penalizing ourselves if we don't need it, but at least we know what we're shooting for.
And just to echo what Commissioner Mercado said, that I think it's very important and unique for the times we're in right now, that we're going to have to look at everything with a different lens, with the equity and even the funding mechanisms. And again, I keep going back to the private-public partnerships. It's the way approach. I want to ask everyone is all the special interest groups to come to the table with an open mind and see what can be accomplished, as opposed to people just, slapping their leg going, oh, that will never happen. We've been at it for 30 years. Just like, okay, clean slate, new lens, let's talk about what needs to happen.
Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, Barry, thank you for taking in the comment I had added about the LGBTQ plus, just being inclusive. I was curious if you could characterize how are we going to arrive at language around that. It could be a pretty large amount, it could be pretty small. I'm just curious if you could characterize how we're going to approach the LGBTQ plus language.
I don't know at this point. I mean, that's something we'll have to think about. But the comment was appreciated, and we'll definitely draft some language that's consistent in tone with the other policies and statements in the text. So to be determined.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners, or Barry, if there's more guidance or issues you feel like we haven't broached, here's your chance.
No, I think, we had divided it into these kind of columns of comments from the public, comments from the commission, and then the metrics. And we've kind of been talking about everything together, which I think is fine. It's all connected anyway. I don't have a whole lot more to add on this. I think this is a check-in more than the end of the process. And at this point, we've heard from the public and we've heard from the commission on sort of your first pass through the plan. You've seen where we intend to go with some of the feedback we've received, and we will be coming back in the next couple of months with actual red line text edits that incorporate these changes. Again, I think I said this at the last meeting. The big issue that's been raised that we really need to get our head around is this kind of economic future of the city and how it aligns with the equity goals. I think we on the staff side are going to need to do some hard thinking about the best way to address that. We do have a very comprehensive analysis of San Rafael's economy that was done as part of this process, but it was done in 2018, and the world is different even 2 years later. I think in a way it is like sea level rise adaptation, in that it's this kind of existential issue that has to be addressed, and we're all trying to get our heads around how we do it. There's got to be a future plan or a future initiative that's an economic strategic plan or an economic vision for the city that I think needs to follow. I don't know, it's not going to happen before the general plan gets adopted, but I think we collectively need to figure out the best way forward given where we are right now, and without punting completely, because I hear that it's not something you can really put off indefinitely. So we'll be working on that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, we can make a motion to accept the report, and I think primarily appreciate all the additional work that was done. We still have this issue of what Barry just said on the economic recovery and vitality. I think it's a really interesting issue. So this is kind of the chance, if any commissioners want to add any other thoughts or comments, I think that's going to be really critical, because there's going to be a lot of implementation issues as you drive through downtown and you see the high levels of vacancy. So if you have thoughts or guidance, I'd encourage, this is a chance to put it on the record so we can help staff if possible. I know you'll be back, right, Barry? I mean, we're still only a third of the way. So,
right.
And I know we also received, I think it was a very late correspondence today with some proposed strikeouts and changes. So I presume in the next round, you'll have a response to their edits and red lines.
There were several letters that came in since the agenda packet went out. And so we will have some additional red line edits, or at least responses to the comments by your next meeting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I do have some thoughts or some guidance around what are some of the steps that we can start looking at from starting on the economic piece, or sort of looking at sort of sector breakdowns. I do have, just as part of some sort of additional work, I do have a rather large treasure trove of economic and demographic data for most of the country, but in particular California, which can be used as kind of a starting point to kind of assess and identify some trends. I don't know what current efforts are underway. Maybe Barry, you could speak to what's happening there, and I can plug in at least the data sets that I have and sort of the analysis I've done to help with that in any way I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that offer, and not prepared to report out on what's being done at the moment, but we can certainly come back at the next meeting with some more information.
Yeah, Commissioner Previtali.
Yeah. Well, just a couple of thoughts. One is I'm confident that we are going to beat COVID through vaccination over the next probably 2 years. So, I think it's not going to be a return to the same place we are now, because I think that a lot of people are realizing that they can work from home And just to use myself as an example, I feel like I'm kind of like an every person, a good example of like the most normal person. I work for a large corporation, and I found out 2 weeks ago that, because our group, which is a small group within the larger corporation, has been working from home so successfully and efficiently that our leaders have decided that they no longer want us to work from the office primarily because they'd like to save money. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's happening to a lot of people. And, the interesting thing about living in Terra Linda is that, working from home isn't as fun as working from San Francisco, where you can go out in the middle of the day and experience the city and, go to lunch, and go out afterwards and whatnot. So I suspect that, just again, using myself as an example, which may not be appropriate, but I suspect there are a lot of people like me who would want sort of like a more active daytime environment in the suburbs and in the neighborhoods, where they can go and take a break from working from home, leave their house, have lunch, maybe go out and have her, but not necessarily have to drive, walk to some entertainment venues or whatnot that are closer to them. So food for thought there. I think that could be a good sort of motivation for additional economic activity in the neighborhoods.
Thank you. Commissioner Davidson.
I have a question for Paul. Since you've been through some of these down economic times all through the city, I was wondering, does the city do any incentives to help out the business community when things are going really bad? Like, for example, in 2008, 2009, when we had that downturn and a lot of businesses closed, I'm wondering, what did the city do as far as incentivizing or anything?
Well, I could tell you what we did in terms of community development. We reduced the level of permit review for new businesses. Unfortunately, by that point, the redevelopment agency had been dissolved. Before that, the redevelopment agency had some resources that would assist and subsidize and help small businesses, especially new small businesses. But that resource went away when the redevelopment agencies resolved, which was around the middle of the recession. So I know that we've done reduced permit review, but that's as much as we've done. Now, fast forward during the pandemic, there were other things that were offered through the city and through the county for small businesses. But, of course, that's short term. That's not anything that's, that's to deal with the pandemic, not anything more specific. So that's as much as I can tell you.
I'll just add that during the discussions in the general plan meetings, there was a lot of encouragement to reach out to high schools or just young people, because they do desire to have fun places to go to so that they don't have to go to the city. And I think it piggybacks on Commissioner Prevatelli's comment that we should really understand what the need is and engage those potential providers to meet the new world we're in due to COVID, and also to attract younger people to stay local and make San Rafael a more energized community. I don't know if you guys noticed, but come 8:30, it's dead downtown as opposed to places like the city. So,
well, if anything was open past 9, it would be more.
I just.
I've tried. Actually, the
the whole downtown vision for San Rafael, which was adopted back in 1903, was all about alive after five.
Yes.
Which was a big deal. And, you know, the city has tried to strive to promote alive after five for decades. So,
well, with my progress, it's alive by 8. So that's
well, you know what? That I think the dining under the lights has really helped. I mean, when that was happening, there was one night that it was really warm and I went down with my family and I was shocked how many people were out there. And it was like really active and vibrant. It's like exactly what you would want. It didn't feel forced. There was lights out, there was music, there were people eating, people grabbing donuts from the food truck. And we just decided last minute to take our kids down there for dinner. And we ended up staying there for hours and just like walking around and they played and stuff. And I think that's the kind of stuff that, you know, we're all seeking in San Rafael. Just like, you know, obviously now with COVID, there's a huge, you know, we don't have the ability to do that right now, but I think hopefully come the spring, we can think about, you know, some of the learnings that we've had during this time and try to implement them. And I think, you know, when we go back to the question of having, you know, this downturn and having a lot of the storefronts that are closed, you know, it's super unfortunate because a lot of these businesses have been here for decades and we're seeing their doors close and it's like heartbreaking. I mean, I remember going to the cake, I think it was like the cake shop, or I forget what it's called, cake supply place.
Cake
yeah, and it was the day they were closed and I talked to the owner and I just was like, I feel awful. You know, I thought this was a place I was going to be taking my kids to for the next 18 years and, you know, and it was really, it very much humanized the whole situation. But I think you know, if we can find a silver lining, is that we have a blank slate right now. I mean, we don't have a lot of these properties vacant. Like, how do we partner with our building owners and our developers to really like think about implementing some of the long-term strategies that we've been thinking of for these sites that are now like not in use? And like, how can the city play a role in like, and thinking about what to do with, you know, now that we kind of have an opportunity. So I definitely don't have answers, but I think like we do have to think of opportunity right now with what the current circumstances.
Bikes down the middle, shut off 4th Street, make it a pedestrian only 4th Street. You know, that closing 2nd or 3rd, there's going to be rioting in the streets if you put a bike lane down either one of those streets. So let's make it pedestrian, bike lane down the middle, just like Europe, you know. Anyway.
I just want to jump in. You guys are going to have a really good opportunity to talk about all this stuff at the next meeting because we're bringing the downtown precise plan to you and it's all about everything you're talking about. So it's good segue to that.
Yeah, I think before we meander too far off of the agenda, let's maybe bring that back in, start to get the creative juices flowing for that next meeting during the holiday break that us parents will be able to relax for 2 weeks of no homeschooling.
No, just like feral children.
Yeah.
With sugar.
Exactly. But I mean, I think unless there's any kind of response or further guidance for Barry in terms of the staff report that was provided tonight, I think there was some really great feedback. Unless there's anything else any other commissioner wants to add for tonight's discussion, we can entertain a motion to approve the staff report.
So moved.
Second. Oh.
So Commissioner Davidson second. And I guess, Allie, if you want to, when you're ready, take roll call.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Lubomirsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Pivatali?
Yes.
Commissioner Saudi?
Yes.
Vice Chair Samudzi?
Yes.
And Chair Mercado.
Yes.
And I just want to confirm that the motion was made by Commissioner Lubomirsky. Is that correct?
Stouty.
That was me.
Samudzi.
Samudzi, thank you. Okay.
Great. All right, we are done with that one. Thank you, Barry, again. We'll see you in a couple months, I gather.
Bill, we've been like a couple of weeks, but
Couple of weeks, right? Not 2020. That's all that counts. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Okay, we'll close that and move it on to director's report, please.
Okay, as you heard, the downtown precise plan is coming your way. The next meeting is for the Planning Commission is January 12th, and that's when you will see the downtown precise plan. And then we will do this similarly to the way we did the general plan, where you'll have the downtown precise plan on the 12th, also on the 26th and the 9th. The other thing that's coming your way is a draft EIR on the general plan and the downtown precise plan. And so we will be sending out notifications of that soon. The other thing I want to mention is for the first meeting of the year, it's also time for your commission to select a new chair and a vice chair and to set the Planning Commission schedule for the year. And we will be soliciting volunteers to sit as Planning Commission liaisons to the DRB. Don't know what that will look like for the year, but I think it's important to have Planning Commissioners liaisons established. That way, if in the event we do some sort of public meeting, that'll be in place. So I will send out a report with the information for you to have prior to that meeting. The other thing I wanted to just mention is just to give you a year-end report. This year has been amazing and crazy. And so I thought it was important to kind of look back at some of the projects that you approved and supported. For this year, you supported a general plan and zoning amendment for development of a 32-unit supportive housing project on 190 Mill. You provided feedback during a study session on a possible general plan amendment that opened up an opportunity may open up the opportunity for additional housing units. You supported a general plan amendment for the BioMarin Whistle Stop project, which allows development of 67 senior housing units and expands the BioMarin facilities. You also approved a 180-room hotel room in East San Rafael. You approved a 44-bed emergency shelter. You supported a number of housing policies that serve to remove barriers to housing production, which was one of the City Council's primary goals for the year and has been for some time. You began to review the General Plan Update 2040, and then you supported and approved a bunch of other developments that included multifamily housing of less than 10 units, as well as just smaller projects that were small in nature, but very meaningful nonetheless. And then the most important part is that you successfully and pretty much seamlessly transitioned from this in chambers Planning Commission meetings to this COVID remote meetings. And I'm super excited to be working for you. And you guys have done a great job. It's been a busy year, and I'm so grateful to you for the work that you do. Volunteering is not an easy task, and we're truly grateful for the work that you do for us. And I look forward to working with you in 2021. And also I want to say, Chair Mercado, great job taking the helm this year. You did an amazing job.
Thank you. Props back to you, especially because, with Rafi leaving, great job tonight. Smooth, no major issues.
That
was great.
Paul, do you want to add anything since you're here? Our director is here. Thank you.
Not really. I think you covered everything. You guys are terrific. I don't attend your meetings very frequently, but I do watch online. And I'm very proud of the Planning Commission. You guys do a terrific job, and I want to thank you for being very much a visionary part of our community, and look forward to 2021, and hopefully it'll be a better year for all of us. So
thanks, Paul.
Paul,
yeah, thanks for being here.
When's the holiday party happening? We doing that virtually?
Yeah, the Fall Creek.
Bad.
I need a lighter or something. I need a letter opener, or
it's that's really sad, because that whole the boards and commissions holiday party at Falkirk is such a nice treat, and it's almost like it's forgotten right now. And I certainly hope that it comes back next year.
Yeah.
Agreed.
May I add something besides thanking staff for the wonderful work they do, hard work? But I just want to share how proud I am that San Rafael has its first female mayor, and I believe its first Hispanic council member as well. So I'm really proud of that. So thank you, everyone. That's wonderful.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I checked out the swearing in meeting last week. It was really, it was great to see. Interesting to see. Allie, did we get everything for the end of the year?
Oh, let's see. Nope, I got everything I wanted to say.
Great. So for the next meeting, then we'll have a proposed agenda, and then potentially we'll probably need to look at the bylaws or rules of procedure in case those need to be updated. And typically, I think we just skim those. But honestly, because this is not going to end anytime soon, we should probably look at those with a fresh eye. I appreciate the compliments this year, but honestly, it was Ali and Rafi who were giving me these amazing scripts to follow. Otherwise, my computer would have exploded many times. I would have broken it the way my daughter broke her computer this morning.
Oh no.
You get angry at kindergarten, so you smash. So thank you guys. But I really do think we should just think about that. And Ali, as we discuss it for the next meeting, please think about ideas to improve it, to make it easier for you and the public. In particular, when we get some bigger projects that come in, we should really think about what that process will look like to maintain sort of our ability to kind of handle this online presence.
Yeah, Chair Mercado, I have a quick question for Ali. What is the status of the DRB right now? Is the city council deciding what's going to happen with that, the structure of that, or where's the status?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. So the city council directed us to kind of reach out to others and receive some feedback, and then come back with a resolution that would look like a pilot program that kind of allows for some restructuring in a way that allows for a subcommittee of the DRB to review certain projects. And so we actually went to the DRB in Design Review Board in November and asked for some input. There were some key questions about structure, makeup, what types of projects, what the public participation process would look like. We received that feedback. The next step is for us to put that together in a resolution type document and present that to the Design Review Board for additional comments. Those comments will be then brought back to the City Council. It'll pass through you for a recommendation, of course, and with an ultimate decision by the City Council on how they want to handle that.
Great. So are there currently any large projects that are going through subcommittee, or is it just all medium and small size projects?
So right now we don't have any major projects that are going through the subcommittee. Some of the projects where their staff has felt like there's value in having a full board. For example, one project we saw with the I'm trying to remember the address, but we have taken certain projects where we felt like, let's come back for a final design review after we get a planning commission decision.
Yeah.
And that way that provides that level of opportunity for public participation. So in situations where we know that there's going to be controversy or an interest in having neighbors participate in the process, the way we would be handling it at this point is to structure so that a final design review is done in a more public setting.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Allie.
Welcome.
I guess that's it. Commission communications before we close this.